trying to beat lockdown fatigue. Some Europeans have been crossing borders, fleeing to countries where they can enjoy more freedom, like Switzerland and Spain.
Seeing the restaurants open is a little shock because in Paris it's depressing. Everything is closed, all the blinds are lowered. Here you can feel there's more human warmth, and we can finally eat at a restaurant on a terrace. It's a feeling we've been missing for quite some time.
So it's not just sun seekers. What so many tourists really want is a slice of the free life they feel their countries no longer offer. But what does that mean for everyone else?
Well, the snow's melting in much of Europe. Case numbers are falling. Officials are easing restrictions and tourists are on the move again. The question is, with different parts of the continent moving at different speeds and with the ongoing threat of new variants, could we find ourselves in trouble again?
Meeting friends and enjoying drinks in the sun, a rare pastime these days, but possible in Madrid. And that's why the Spanish capital has become a refuge for young tourists from France.
It's so depressing being in a country that is nothing's open. It's gloomy all day. You have to be back. There's a curfew at 6. You can't even see your friends. There are no cafes. There's no, you can't sit down with anyone. You literally can't do anything in France.
In Madrid, coronavirus restrictions are less strict than in other parts of Europe. A negative PCR test was enough for Zita de Montil to come here. She didn't have to quarantine and also brought a friend.
I come here, there is sun, there is friends, there is a terrace, cafe. It's amazing, it's a dream come true.
A dream that Theodor Storp and Ayub Kalbi have also pursued. The students live in Germany and are spending a few days here. They planned the trip with friends, knowing that Germany has advised its population to avoid travelling to high-risk countries.
Somehow you feel bad if you travel, because other people are self-isolating, and you're not supposed to travel at the moment. But I don't think you can stay at home for a whole year either. We want to see the world while we're in the prime of our lives.
Madrid's police sometimes have to break up illegal parties held after a curfew, with participants ignoring current contact restrictions, which is ideal for the spread of the virus. This party was organised by French tourists.
We've had to intervene on several occasions. All the participants were foreigners who had come to Madrid for a short time, 2 or 3 days. They rent an apartment and then they party.
Fines for these offences during the pandemic start at €600. Spanish authorities are in contact with their French counterparts. Illegal parties also worry Dr. Laura Sanz. In the end, they all contribute to more infections. We already have to be very careful with family members and in our everyday lives. Unnecessary contact has to be avoided. The young people we met this afternoon in Madrid think both can work, being responsible and enjoying the freedoms of life.
We do all the PCR tests and everything. We wear the mask when we have to. We don't want to bother Spanish people, We just want to live again. And in France, we cannot do that for now.
Madrid is one of the few cities in Europe that still allows some leeway, though that could change at any time.
Luis Santamaria is an environmental and health researcher with the Spanish National Research Council. The grass is always greener on the other side, but what can be the consequences of a little trip over the border to shake off the quarantine blues, so to say?
Well, the main consequence is that you may get infected, and actually people may think when they go to a place, they may look at the average infection rate, but actually they are going to mix most likely with people who are at a higher risk because of the things they're doing. And most importantly is that epidemiologically, it's much worse than a local infection where you will have the people around you infected and they can be traced by the health services, because these people is going to go back to 20 different places across Europe and then you will have new cases in very different places. So you are going really a disservice to the control of the pandemic.
And what's the likelihood of their actions leading to not only the spread of the virus, but also the creation of a new and possibly deadlier variant?
The thing is, the more cases we have, the highest is the likelihood that we will get new variants. So having a high number of cases is multiplying that risk. And of course, the possibility to localize and control new variants is strongly decreased if they are spread quickly at very different geographic regions. So going to countries where there is high number of cases is putting in risk not only your local community, but also actually the rest of the rest of Europe, basically, the rest of places where other tourists may be coming also to this place.
So what's the solution? Close the borders and close them quickly?
I think the solution should be more strategic. What I'm lacking strongly at both national and European level is an integrated and long-term planning that really acknowledges that this is a long-term fight and that we need to keep cases low, that stopping waves when they are high is really a waste of money and lives. And what I will suggest is to have a system of thresholds in which different measures are enforced, and only at the highest threshold demanding regions or country to close borders to protect others. But my impression is that countries closing borders to prevent people coming in and infecting is not the solution. The solution is areas with high infection rates being the ones that close borders to protect the rest of the neighbors, the rest of Europe.
So which countries here in Europe have got that strategy right, would you say?
I mean, we have probably the worst examples and the best examples. The worst examples probably include the UK, which was very lenient in its approach and actually allowed a new variety to spread across Europe, and then it closed borders, kind of blaming the outside and telling its population that it has to be protected from new variants. The approach will be the opposite, and I think Portugal probably is one of the best examples. It has been very proactive in taking measures at the beginning of the pandemic, and then when it had high number of cases, it closed borders, and I think the main reason was to protect the neighbors, and that was a bit the way it was presented. In between, I mean, most countries haven't really approached the problem properly. I think there should be really a pan-European strategy, and that is largely lacking. And the funding to support that strategy is also terribly delayed.
Luis, why can't the politicians get it right? I mean, they've got you guys, the scientists and researchers, in their ear.
Well, decision-making is always difficult, and I understand that there has been a huge scientific effort to fight this pandemic. The population in general, our data show that has been extremely cooperative and reactive, the majority. Probably the mixture of doubting to harm the economy and thinking of the elections of partisan fights have got in the way. And short-term planning and the control of the pandemic is the worst combination.
It sure is. Luis Santamaria, thank you very much for joining us today from the Spanish National Research Council.
Thanks a lot.
And keep sending in your questions. Here's our science guy, Derek Williams, with his latest Q&A on the coronavirus.
What will the longer-term impacts on the generation growing up with COVID-19 be?
This is a very tough topic for kids and young people and also their parents. And I think it makes sense to look at it from two different angles. The first is the question of how the disease can affect a young person's physical health, which in some ways, for me at least as a parent, has surprisingly turned into the less scary aspect of the equation. That's because it's grown clear that as a general rule, the younger the person, the less severe the symptoms of COVID-19 tend on average to be, if you get it. I don't want at all to imply that children or young people out there haven't suffered and died from it. Many have. But that happens a lot less frequently than it does in adults, especially in older adults. The question of possible long hauler effects in kids is kind of a separate one. Data is still too sparse to say much of anything about that with certainty. We'll only know more when more time has passed. What's also already clear, however, is the longer-term effects that COVID-19 will have on the other important aspect of this issue. It's psychological and its developmental impacts. For a lot of older kids and young adults all over the world, the opportunities like internships and entry-level jobs that provide a springboard into life as an adult have just disappeared in the last year. And that's led to a social crisis of unprecedented dimensions in that age group, I think, that will unquestionably have long-term consequences. And for younger children and teenagers, where socialization plays such a key role in development, and because education is so closely linked to certain stages of it, educators and experts say the effects of shutting preschools and schools are going to be severe and long-term. Just how severe will depend on how much longer the pandemic continues.